Is it okay that everyone is scrolling past Aleppo stories? Now, the biggest story of the week is also the hardest to deal with, and clearly we are in no way qualified to explain what's going on in Syria, but I'm going to give it a bit of a crack. OK, during the Arab Spring, an uprising formed in Syria against their leader, Bashar al-Assad. Protests led to a rebellion, which Assad allegedly tried to crush with chemical weapons and barrel bombs. Now, while some countries like the US supported the rebels, Iran and Russia supported Assad, and then ISIS sprang up in the middle of it all like a weed sprouting from a turd. Unfortunately, no one group was strong enough to win the fight. So what you've now got is places like Aleppo being divided into three sections, one controlled by rebels, one controlled by jihadists and one controlled by Assad. This week, Russia decided they were going to help Assad regain Aleppo by bombing the living crap out of the rebel-held parts of the city, which led to deaths of civilians, destruction of hospitals and just the awful images we've all seen around the world. Now, clearly it's way more complex than that, but that is the basics of what's gone on this week. What do we make of all this? And if you're watching this right now, we're not going to make light of it, we're not going to make jokes about it, because it is serious.
No, it's awful. And kind of the images you see on the news are awful. I think I've said before on this show that I often when I see stuff like that, I have to I don't watch it because I find it too difficult, and it's easier, and I know it might not be right, but you insulate yourself from it because you think, what can I do? And I don't know what the rights and wrongs of what's gone on are, because I'm not qualified to say that. But what's weird is you see these images of refugees leaving place and all this stuff blown up and stuff, and it's not like out of nowhere. You see this, this has happened before and before in my lifetime, a lot of times, and it's weird how you get used to it. And I suppose all you can do is go, whatever happened before, you hope that people respond, in a humanitarian way and try and make the best of what they can for these people. And I know that sounds like trite and pointless, but I don't know what else you can say on it. And I think that the problem with it is, it's such a intricate thing, as you say. I don't think there's a right answer. There's not a thing that could have happened that could have changed it all and made it all right. It's too complicated. It's decades and decades, as the Middle East is, decades and decades of messed up decision-making and too many things overlapping, and it's just so sad.
Well, and weirdly, this little bit started with some graffiti. In 2011, some school kids painted "Your Next Doctor" on a wall in Syria as a reference to Bashar al-Assad, who was an ophthalmologist. The kids were rounded up and tortured, that sparked protests, and eventually it led to a rebellion. And you're exactly right. The problem is, and I think a lot of the world is going through this, we don't know who to support. We've been talking about this for years, and we've no idea who the bad guys are, because both the rebels and Assad have been accused of some pretty horrible things. The only way I can describe it is, it's like the time Piers Morgan got into a fight with Jeremy Clarkson. Now, imagine that in your head. It's happened a few times. No one knew which side to take.
I know. So I like them both. I like them both.
So you just stand there and watch. And that's what happened. Now imagine the ISIS of the situation. Katie Hopkins decides she's going to join in. And then all hell breaks loose. And that is what's going on in Syria. Libya and Iraq showed what happened when we intervene and we leave a mess behind. Syria now shows what happens if we don't intervene and we leave a mess to form on its own. The UN can't do anything because Russia and China keep vetoing any attempts to crack down on Syria. Donald Trump's not going to do anything because he wants to stay on Putin's good side. And all the while, thousands of refugees are fleeing the situation. Someone called Brick Tamland, probably is not his real name, said, "Is it OK to feel utterly hopeless watching the situation in Syria for 5 years and wondering what I can do to help?" And I guess that's what we've all been thinking this week, is what we can do to help. Just give to a charity. Just give to a charity that helps the Syrian people. Go online, Google the word Syria and relief, and donate to a charity that looks reputable. There are heaps of them and they can all help.